Yeah, I don't really care to convince you. I more of care to just give a reasonable argument and have a general consensus or a judge,
Oh yeah, of
interpret that
course, right. I
argument,
think
form a
personally,
judgment,
yeah.
etc.
Oh yeah. I don't really. Okay, so about the judge thing, that's a bit controversial, right? I don't really agree with the judges recently, but I mean, I was gonna say that I agree personally that you don't need to convince me to believe in your position. I don't believe that's an imperative.
Mm.
I think it is better for it to give a reasonable, I guess, premise or set of premises as to why I should grant the idea that pro-life is the better position, morally speaking, right?
So, and what would be considered a valid criteria within a lens that both of us can agree with?
Something
Something
which
reasonable, right?
basically raises the probability for a position, or basically shows why
Right.
this is deductively valid in like formological classical logic.
Pardon?
Something which basically is probability raising or shows why it is necessarily true under logical lens.
Yeah, I don't really care to argue why something is necessarily true by a classical logic or a modern modal logic form, only because I feel like something considering such as abortion and something like that, something that is very, very, in my opinion, subjective, something that is arguing based off whether someone's legal rights, right, should be taken or given, or whether something should be
Mm-hmm.
morally permissible. I think these
Mm-hmm.
things are upon the determining factor of a certain localized group. But I think for certain groups and for certain areas, it would be logically reasonable. So I essentially would just be arguing for the utility. So let's say if I present an argument, for example, and this is just
Mm-hmm.
hypothetical, if I present an argument such as if I think if more people have babies, it would be better for the economy because we would have more workers within our traditional societies, and at the same
Mm-hmm.
time we would diminish our risk and our factors of having
Yeah.
low I don't know management or employees
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, something like that, something util,
Yeah.
something that we wouldn't have to argue into semantics and stuff like that and breach it out into meta debating and something that we just wouldn't need to do. You get what I'm talking
Oh,
about?
so yeah, I get that argument. To me, that sounds like an argument from societal utility, but it's basically saying that, well, if we grant that pro-life is true or it is more reasonable, then basically it would increase the societal or potential economic utility. And I personally believe
Somewhat. I
that
mean,
sure,
it was an
I could
analogy,
even
but
grant.
that's somewhat what I
Wait,
said.
I was just gonna say, bro, one more thing. I was just gonna say, I could
Mhm.
even grant the preponderance of utility in that particular lens, but then I could just say, well, why
Then
is
we
the
don't have
case?
to
Why is it
debate.
the case that societal lens, I guess, extrapolates to like
If you don't
moral
grant
lens?
utility, then we don't have to debate
No.
because I
It's
just
a
I
matter of
just don't find it
it's a matter
interesting.
of no. I just think you're misinterpreting. I'm saying that I grant the utility that you're postulating, but I just don't
Okay, so
grant
do you
this
want to
utility
debate?
to extrapolate. Wait, hold on. I was just gonna say I just don't grant the utility you're invoking here to extrapolate to why
Okay,
it
so
is
we
more
don't need to
morally
debate then.
reasonable.
Is there another topic you want to do?
Let's see. Uh, mm, what's your stance on God's existence?
I don't think he exists.
Okay, are you a strong atheist or an agnostic atheist?
An agnostic.
Okay, I'll just take the stance that God exists.
Are you referring to utilitarianism? Who is that? EU?
That's
You're
right.
permanently blocked. That was just retarded. Oh, never mind. He's a friend. Who is that? Yo, this nigga has to be trolling me. Oh, never mind. That nigga's trolling my shit. Um, you said you're gonna take the stance that he does exist, or pick a different topic.
Yeah, he does exist.
Okay. Do you want to judge for
Okay, I'm
that?
just gonna
Do
use
you
like
want
the
a lawyer?
Neoplatonic
What's up?
argument. Are you fine with that?
What was that?
I'm just going to use the Neoplatonic argument.
Okay. And is there any judge?
I don't really use judges.
Okay. The only thing that I will say that excuse me. The only thing I will say that I'm not going to argue for, or that I'm not going to argue against, I'm not going to argue against a definitional agent. And by what I mean by that is, let's say that we get into an argument to where we're just defining clear and cut out semantics and stuff like that, and eventually the adjectives that what we would describe as a supernatural agent or an abstraction or something we would consider God, these this being where you place its adjectives and stuff like that on things that are already existent within our empirically observable universe, such as I think God is a tree, or I think God is a monitor, or something like that. Like I don't care to argue against that. I'll argue against things that consist of metaphysical functionality or things of that nature, but I don't really care to argue against anything linked to our personal observation of
Empirical
this
world, yeah,
empirical
I get
world.
it. Yeah.
Right.
These niggas copy and pasted my fucking arguments in chat. But anyway, anyway, as I was gonna say, yeah. So I would define God to be an omnipotent cause of the universe, the being that created the universe in some sense, right? And he's omnipotent, right? He's not restricted by anything. That would be my, I guess, my definition or understanding of what this being actually would represent, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So I would just say that either it is the case that reality is composed of conditioned realities, or it is not composed of conditioned realities solely.
Yeah, but hold on. I'm gonna go pee real quick.
Okay. Have a nice pee.
How you feel? Huh? Hold on, bro. Let me put my headphone back on. How you feel?
Judge what? Oh, I just don't agree with the judges.
How you feel? Maybe I feel fine. You want to dial that side? All right. Woo! Not gonna lie. I took a quick hit. Whew.
Was that shit good? Was that a good piss?
Never ask me
Can
that
you hear
again. Apollo. So,
You.
what argument? Where are you going?
Oh yeah, so the first premise is just that either reality is only composed of conditioned realities, or it is not only composed of conditioned realities.
So you're saying it is or it isn't? Then why is that?
It is or isn't, and isn't. I'm saying either it is or isn't.
Yeah, that's what I just said. I'm asking why.
Because of the LEM.
And what is the LEM?
Law of excluded middle.
Okay. And why
Yes.
should that be considered to everything? Are you saying that everything is a black and white? It either is or isn't?
Yeah,
Okay. Why?
because of the LEM.
Okay. Yeah. And why?
Okay, so are you trying to say that LEM is a false dichotomy?
I'm just asking you to prove your claim. Is there something wrong
Okay,
with
so
it?
either proposition is or is not the case. If it is neither, then that means it is not a proposition. If it is both, then that means it's a contradiction. Contradictions are logically impossible. Therefore, we have to reject both possibilities. Therefore,
Yeah, and
the
by
only two
that same
possibilities is
logic,
that
we
it
would
is or
have to
is or
be
isn't.
already no. By that same logic, we would already be having to assume that we are both subscribing to that exact same according logic. I'm asking by what justifiable logic would any of this be forced
You don't
under
think classical
my
logic is held in
lens?
the background?
I'm just asking you a question. You made a proposition, so I'm asking you to prove it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that I made a proposition and you're basically invoking a probative burden on what I was saying. But I think I've given a sufficient response by basically eliminating the other possibilities or other possible basically propositions you could be saying to deny the LEM, right? So I always
I
use like
think
a
you've
process of elimination,
described.
basically.
I think you've described the logic that you use to apply the LEM, but I don't think you've justified by any means.
Wait, are you asking for like inferential justification or non-inferential justification?
I'm asking for inferential justification, but a little bit of a flavor to it. I need some
So
not
you think
necessarily
so? How exactly?
wait,
I don't get it though.
not
It's
necessarily an empirical grasp to it, but I do need some type of concrete evidence. Like for example, if I were to say, for example, let's say we're both discussing on water bottles. We're both just 5-year-olds just talking about nonsense in recess. We see a water bottle, we bottle flip it, but it's a little bit below, let's say 23%. So it doesn't flip. Instead of just the gravity of the bottom of the bottle just flips over and knocks it on the ground. Now we start having a debate. We start having a debate on whether it is the weight of the air that is pulling the the weight of the air of the inside the bottle where the water isn't located, whether that's pulling it down or whether the water is pulling it down, right? Let's say we have a debate on that. Now we would have to assume two logics. Either A, air has a mass greater than water to where air would pull it down, or we would have to subscribe to another logic, which would be obviously considerably the actual logic. This is just an analogy that the water has more mass, right? Yeah, Isaac Simp in chat, you're just retarded. Don't bother listening. But anyways, we have both of those. Now, both of those either fall over to the right or fall over to the left, right? But obviously, we know, me and you, we both know the water has the mass, but those kids don't. Now, if one person were to ask, let's say the kid were to ask, but what logic justifies that the water has more mass? And the kid had no explanation. Normally, in a normal conversation, you probably wouldn't care about anything. But for this right here, we have a burden of proof. We have Hitchens' razor. Your proposition, which was that this already, your Athens, what's up, Athens? Your, proposition that this LEM and stuff like that is already pre-justified, and me asking you to prove that proposition requires more than you just outlining why you think this is the case. It requires more than you just
I'll just lay my response.
Why you think this is the case, or else my counter can just be another description of why I think it's not the case, and both of us are going to just keep going back and forth. You get what I mean? It wouldn't make any sense. And Claps in chat, you're permanently blocked. Never ping me again.
Anyway, as I was going to say, so I wasn't paying to every exact detail of your analogy. By the way, am I bugging or no?
No, you're not.
Okay, so I'm saying I wasn't paying, I guess, full attention to every single detail of your analogy, but I think your analogy was slightly disanalogous in the sense where, in the analogy you presented, you basically presented a case where we're talking about the observable. We're talking about something with respects to a posteriori justification or empirical justification, or justification which is basically parasitic on our sensory faculties, right? And I'm saying that in this case, we're appealing to something else. In this case, we're talking about whether it is an a priori truth or a necessary truth of the matter that it is the case that LEM is true, and obviously it's going to be logically necessary if if it is the case that the laws of logic is what dictates whether something is logically necessary, logically impossible, or logically possible in the first place, right? Now, to respond in another means, right, I think it is very intriguing to even ask for an inferential justification for the laws of logic, or more specifically the LEM, which is one of the laws of logic, considering that the way how we understand inferential justification and what is valid from what is invalid is in virtue of presupposing the laws of logic in the background. So I think when you understand, or I think when you grasp onto the idea, or the fact rather, that the laws of logic are pretty much background beliefs, that is, they're beliefs which aren't foreground beliefs, they're beliefs which basically determines justification as a whole and is the bar of justification as a whole, then you instantaneously understand that it is quite literally unintelligible or illogical to basically ask someone to justify the laws of logic in the same way as you'd ask someone to justify, for example, the idea that someone went to the mall, for instance, right? I think that is pretty reasonable. I think it is pretty much I think it is basically the same as asking someone, why is it the case that your understanding of what is going on is correct, right? How do you know this? I mean, asking that question, or asking someone, how is your understanding of the world credible, right? Or how do you know this conclusion? For them to even present any form of knowledge, or I guess epistemic justification for such conclusion, is going to require their understanding in the first place. Thus making the question unintelligible and supposedly meaningless. I think that's the question that you're kind of asking right now, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong on this.
But what would make it meaningless, though? Are you saying that I can't ask you to prove your proposition other than another description? And if you were going to give another description, other than you're already what do you say?
I don't know what that nigga said, but he said he'd be right back.
Okay.
I said I'm going to switch my mic. Give me a sec.
Yeah, go for it. I don't know who Claps is, but please go ahead and end your life. You feel me? Yeah, just go ahead and do that. You're blocked. You're talking to thin air. Not gonna lie.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah. Do you want me to explain? Go for it. So basically, if you're already pre-subscribing to this already, your thought about logic, the LEM and stuff like that, and you give another description of why you think that logic is valid, there's a problem. I'm not asking you why you think it's valid. You telling me that there wasn't anything I lose from that. But at the same time, that's not what I asked you. I asked you to prove it. Now, by the means you prove it and what we consider proving it, if you want to discuss that, then you can. But if you just give another description of why you think this is the case, I'm just going to give another description of why I don't think this is the case. And this is just going to turn into me talking to you and you talking to me. And this right here, it's not going to get us anywhere. You get what I mean? I think there has to be some type of, as you said previously, some type of inferential evidence and some type of inferential response with flavor, with some empirical flavor. I'm not asking for a direct empirical claim. Obviously, to some degree, not all of empirics can prove God's existence. You know, it'd be asking you an impossible task for you to prove, an abstraction, right, with this physical world. But I am asking for something for more of a description for why the LEM is correct. That's all.
Okay, so I was just basically pointing out the background-foreground distinction within our doxistology, and as doxistology refers to our belief system, right? And I was saying that quite literally, like, I think you've given me a good idea to supplement my argument, actually, with that response. I mean, you said a while ago that it would be a meaningless and almost unintelligible or nonsensical question to ask someone to demonstrate empirical evidence for God's existence. I mean, obviously, within the nature of what God is, he's not going to be something which is empirical or observable because he's outside of spatio-temporal coordinates. And I think that analogy can be, I guess, coextensive with what I'm talking about. Because what I'm talking about is simply the idea, which is that if it is the case that you're asking me for inferential justification for the laws of logic, or more specifically, the law of excluding middle, or tertium non datur in Latin, well, it wouldn't make any sense, right? Because of the fact that these laws, which we hold in the background for our cognitive faculty or epistemic processes as a whole, is quite literally what acts as you could say the gold standard for inferential justification. So any form of justification I was to attempt to give for the LEM would quite literally assume the LEM in some implicit manner. Quite literally, like if I was to ask you, for instance, well, Archie, why do you think the law of identity is true? I mean, every response you're to give to attempt to justify the law of identity quite literally is going to presume this in the background because it's just an axiomatic foundation within our epistemology.
Yeah, but that right there, that quote unquote axiomatic foundation, and you saying that this is a presupposition, the question of the day is why? At the end of the day,
well, it is justified in virtue for our intuitions.
The LEM assumes, right? It presupposes that there is only a black and white, that there is only a right and a left and an up and a down, and there is no in between. There is no gray area. There is no plurality
What would that in
of
between
more
be, by the way?
options other than this binary thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna assume that this is the case, that there's only this binary function engraved within logic that we cannot get out of. That is your proposition. I think that it would be completely valid to ask you to prove that. You trying to resupport that, and you saying that there's only two forms, two pathways that we can choose. That right there, it needs some type of support. I understand at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to provide some type of empirical claim and stuff like that. That's completely fine. But there's something needed more than just another description, And I feel like we're talking a bit too much. I feel like we're circling. I'm not done speaking. I feel like we're circling a bit on the previous point. Unless you want to add something more, it seems like you do. But if not, I feel like we should probably push for conclusions and find a judge.
Okay, so I was just going to say to you in response, right? I was just going to simply say that it appears as if every time when someone is skeptical of a position, right, whether it is Cartesian skepticism or just normal skepticism or radical skepticism, they are usually skeptical because of the fact that they believe it is possible for that conclusion or that idea that they're skeptical towards to be false. Now, I take it that when you're skeptical of the LEM, you're accepting the possibility of the LEM being false. And I mean, you tried to say a while ago that basically what I was assuming was that the world is black and white and there's no gray area. I mean, that's pretty interesting. That's an interesting claim to make, right? When you're saying that there could possibly be something in between, I'm curious, what exactly could this possibility be referring to? What could be in between true or false in such a way where it basically negates or falsifies the validity of the LEM? I'm curious about that, Archie.
I don't think anything inherently falsifies it, and that's not what I'm saying, but I also don't think anything inherently proves it as well. My claim to you as an agnostic is not to say and directly deny your claim. That would just be a complete straw man. But instead, I'm just putting your proposition into question. You made the initial proposition that the LEM is an axiomatic functionality, right? You're saying that this has to be the case. This is something that we presuppose. This is a part of our fundamental reality. And I'm saying that such a big and extraordinary claim that needs some type of evidence that is provided outside of the lines of just a description given by you. Because at the end of the day, if there's just a description given by you, I can give a counter's description. You feel me? I could just give another one. Like we'll just keep going all day. That's what I'm saying. I've been saying this for the past
bugging, by the way.
5 minutes. I feel like we're not really getting anywhere, and I feel like we're
let me know if
pushing
I'm
a bit
bugging, by the way.
into
Do I sound as if I'm bugging? Do you sound as if I'm bugging?
Pardon?
Am I bugging?
No.
Okay, good. So I was going to say, well, I agree that it is not some imperative or you have to show like another, I guess, option, right? But I take it that when you're adopting like a level of agnosticism where you're saying, well, we don't know if this is true or we don't know if this is true. All right, that is true. Well, I take it that skepticism in itself is usually motivated by the background belief or assumption that it is possible that whatever we are skeptical towards as an epistemic or rational agent, right, it is possible that such a conclusion could be false, right? And I mean, I don't see how exactly you've shown any good reason to even be motivated to be a skeptic in the sense where you've not even shown the possibility of it being false. And I think that in itself kind of like you could say self-defeats, or I wouldn't say self-defeat, but I mean, it basically points out a lack of good motivation to even be skeptical of this obvious fact or conclusion in virtue of the fact that you're basically, I could say, unable, right, to present the possibility of this being false. And to lay to another response, I mean, I think I've given a sufficient reason as to why the LEM is true. It's going to be true in virtue of our a priori intuitions, right? The fact that this is what we intuit about propositions, and the fact that the conceptual understanding of propositions quite literally entails the LEM, right? And if you don't want to agree with this, that's fine. I'm not forcing you to agree with this or anything. I'm not going to push you against the wall or anything to agree with my point. We can just move on or give our conclusions if that's fine with you.
Yeah, the problem with that right there is saying that I know I don't have to agree with it, and I know you're not forcing me to, but that's the problem though. This assertion, this proposition, it needs proving. It has a burden of proof that needs to be fulfilled. This is a necessity in order for you to progress forward and in order for us to progress within the debate without, a concession or anything. You get what I mean? This proposition needs to be fulfilled. And for me in my stance and skepticism, you saying that there is a lack of motivation for my stance, I don't need to have a reason for picking my stance. My job here and my role in this debate as an agnostic is to critique your arguments. You're delivering propositions to me, your initial proposition being that the LEM is a fundamental part of this reality, this axiomatic functionality, in your own words, directly word for word. This proposition, it needs proving. I asked you that initial claim first. If you want to bring up now that I need some type of motivation or some type of proof for my stance, I'd have to ask why at all that's necessary. Because to be honest, I already picked my stance before the debate, and we already agreed that this was my stance. If you're going to try to argue about why I shouldn't be taking that stance, sure, we can go forth to another point and we can press that afterwards. But the current point at hand, right, without switching the goalpost or without switching the point to a different one, right?
What the fuck did Ice King say in chat? Nigga said Apollo fucked your little sister and he never got back pussy. What the fuck?
Yeah, that nigga's name Ice King. We don't take him too serious. He's definitely a geek.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to what I was saying. But that right there, you need to prove right now that the proposition at hand is true. And if you can't prove that, or if you feel like, or better yet, if you feel like you already have, instead of just continuously pressing upon this point, how about this? How about instead of just continuous upon this and going for dualism, how about we get a judge and we just go to conclusions. It's pretty easy.
Okay, so I mean, you said that you don't need to show a motivation as to why you're skeptical. I never made the assertion, and I'm not saying that you said I made the assertion, but I'm making it clear that I never made the assertion that you ought to show a reason or a good motivation for being skeptical of my position. All I was just basically saying to you is that it just seems to be consistent with skepticism that they usually grant the possibility of the contrary being false. But if you don't grant that possibility, that's fine, right? Now, as I was going to say,
I didn't grant the possibility. Me as an agnostic and me as a skeptic is not neither confirming or denying the existence or the lack of existence.
I know.
That's
basic A-book, but I was just going to finish this by
and putting into question all of your propositions, which is what I'm doing.
Yeah, I just want to finish this by basically saying I just want to finish this right by basically saying that obviously we have some major expostulation on who won this point, right? And you don't think I sufficiently proven my point, and I think I definitely, indubitably, sufficiently.
Yeah, there's a cognitive dissonance between
us. But the point is that I just wanted to lay out this one last thing, right? And I'd really appreciate if you did not interrupt me, right? I just wanted to lay out that the fact, which is, well, I think I basically provided a good reason as to why we should accept the LEM. I appeal to our a priori intuitions. I appeal to the absence of the possibility of it being false, as well as I appeal to the fact that it is the bar, along with the rest of the laws of thoughts, for our inferential justificatory system. So to ask for inferential justification for something which quite literally determines what is inferentially justified from what is not inferentially justified is quite literally is going to rely upon this thing in the background, since it is literally the epistemic bar for this particular tool that we use in our discussions or linguistic discourses.
That's the problem right there.
One last thing. Hold on. Wait. I didn't finish. When you were talking, I was really courteous. I did not interrupt you.
Yeah, that's cool. You didn't.
Yeah, I just want to let me just say one more point, right? Just one more point.
Yeah, that's fine. You didn't. Yeah, you didn't finish.
So I was gonna say
what you said there.
Yeah, I understand that you think there's a problem with what I said, right? But you can let the problem right after me finish speaking. I really appreciate that.
That's not what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was gonna say what you said previously.
So, but you aren't even allowing me to finish
referring to whether what's it called?
So
we
why are
have
you
to justify our inferential beliefs and stuff like that.
I'll just say the last part, though. I'll just say the last part, which is
inferential beliefs and inferential justifications.
Oh, just saying that it is analogous to basically asking for
that in itself is also a statement that requires some type of evidence and claim. You can't keep making these claims and not presenting any justification. And I feel like
what do you think we mean by logically valid?
We're not getting anywhere. You just keep going on to your points consistently and over, trying to justify and prove your claim with a description to which I could just describe and counter it with another description. It just keeps going forth and forth into a loop in a circle. So I'm saying we should more of and probably just get a judge, go to conclusions, instead of just going back and forth and baffling and stuff like that unnecessarily. And then we can make sense of this point. It's pretty simple. If you feel like you've won and you've already justified, that's fine. I think I've already justified. You think you've already justified.
Yeah. I personally believe this derogatory to say that I was making unnecessary baffling, to be honest, right? That's what I think, at least. But
you can think it's derogatory. I think you're a hard R. We should just go to conclusions.
I'm being a hard R right now?
Yeah, tad bit. I'm not saying that because your action is just your skin color. But just go to conclusions.
You're really racist, by the way.
That's
I was just going to say. Right? I was just going to basically assert that, well, yeah, we can head to conclusions at least. I think I've definitely proved my point. Do you want to conclude first?
We can pick a judge.
Oh, I don't care to pick a judge.
To who are we concluding to?
The audience, and we can just have it recorded.
The channel settings? Dino? Who would we be concluding to?
I already told you we could be concluding to. Like everyone who would watch a recording at least, right? Pretty reasonable.
So we'd be concluding to everyone.
Yeah, including persons who would watch the recording in the future.
Right? Which would also include people who are not listening right now, which would also include people who are looking to troll right now, which would also include people who don't know at all what we're talking about right now, which would also include people
I think the major point of conclusion isn't necessarily...
Which would also include people who are spacing out right now and are just now focusing in because it's getting louder. It includes a lot of people. And I think that you can understand that, right? Because
No, I don't
there's
think that's
been seen
retarded.
multiple times in the past to where people not only troll, not only do this. I mean, for good reason, right? This is a nerdy debate. Obviously, they're going to troll, right? To some degree, some of them at least, right? Some of them are going to take it serious, but some of them are going to troll. I think it'd be better if we get a judge, right? To where that judge has this single priority of focusing in on both of us, examining our arguments, listening to our conclusions, and just deciding who's best. Or not even
Well,
best,
I
but
don't
just
think it is
who
better
won the debate.
necessarily to pick a judge. So we just have a
Oh, you
disagreement.
don't think it's better to pick a judge?
Yeah, and I don't think it is better either.
Oh, okay.
I was also laying out something
you would
else at least. I
agree.
was
So
basically
you would
saying
agree
to
that
you.
there is someone in
I was
chat right
basically
now
saying to
who
you
is
about the
not listening,
conclusion
right?
stuff. I'm
Hold
listening
on.
to
You
what
would
you're saying, but
agree.
I was just going to say to you that the conclusion isn't necessarily only for
I was gonna
personal
ask.
points of the audience.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. Can you tell me, Apollo? Is everyone in chat right now listening? Like in the audience?
Even if they're not listening, that's fine with me,
No,
right?
I'm just asking.
basically
Just a
including for the
question.
recording.
Is everyone listening in the audience? Pretty simple, right? I'd like to know.
Let's see.
Are they?
Okay, so how about this? Would you be fine with like Athens judging?
Sure.
Okay,
If he
so
would agree
Athens,
to,
you can
hold
conclude
on.
first. Go ahead.
If
Yeah.
he would agree to actually like explain his judgment and give me time to like elaborate, like not full on have a blown debate with him, because I don't think anyone wants to see that. Like I'm not gonna just full on harass him, press him, go D1 mode on him, but just elaborate and get to have a conversation with him. So
Flamingo is
if I
just
disagree
mad that
and
Dick
stuff.
slapped him yesterday. You're just mad, nigga. Anyway, continue.
Anyways, so that both of us can just have like a conversation with him. If we even disagree, like if he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to. That'd be kind of shady, but you get what I mean. Right?
He said he can't give verdict right now. I'm not gonna pick
Getting
any other
ready to
judge.
travel. Okay, I'd prefer, like, this has nothing to do with his skill, but I would prefer someone in the moment who can like do it, who's free right now.
Well, I don't think anyone in this VC, I don't consider those persons to be credible, to be honest, to give a judgment on a philosophical debate. I have a really high bar for credibility. I would let Vibes judge.
You don't consider Shinra competent?
No.
Wait,
He knows that.
Why not?
Apollo just said he'd let me judge. Why don't you just go with that?
I never said that.
Okay, moving on. So why don't you want Shinra?
Because I don't view him as competent, that's all.
What do you mean?
What do I mean
In
by
what,
I don't view him as
regard?
competent?
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean? In what regard do you not view him as competent?
Well, in both debating and judging competency, plus alongside the fact that he was indicating that he was biased against me with his placement on my tier list, or my placement on his tier list.
So I would say, right, I think it'd be pretty insufficient and pretty unreasonable for you to just say that I don't want this judge simply because I don't think he's that he's competent, or I don't think that he's this. Like, obviously, if there's some justification and reason behind it, but I think if we use that metric, then by that logic, that any of us can just keep denying judges. I think that we should both be able to pick judges, and obviously, if there's a valid reason against a judge, yeah. But if you don't have a valid reason, I see no problem with using Shinra. I think, in my opinion, I can vouch for him being pretty competent. I can vouch for him being a very, very intellectual, kid, very, very honorable, very, very honest. I haven't seen Shinra at all troll. I haven't seen him yell, spur.
this nigga's lying.
I haven't seen him lie. I honestly think, no, I'm serious. I think that he's a honorable kid, and I think that you should give him a chance.
Oh,
Because
well,
he's
I
a-
just disagree with everything you say. I can say on the contrary that I think he is a very.
So since you
I just say on the
disagree
contrary.
yeah. Since you disagree very confidently, I'm sure. Can you please give me an example of, any time Shinra has done anything?
Well, that seems to be interesting, Archie.
Trolling-wise?
I mean, you seem to be very confident he's a competent person. So why don't you give us an example of him being
Oh, of
competent?
course. Are you aware of who Ryan Harrison is?
No, actually, I'm not aware of who that guy is.
Oh, okay. Well, he's a pretty competent debater himself, but you are aware he's admitted that Shinra is above him, right?
Wait, how is he a competent debater? I don't know who this person is, but how
Ryan,
is he
do you know who
competent?
Quince is?
I don't know who Quince is.
Quince is, I mean, I can vouch he's arguably top 5 in the comm. And you are aware that Ryan Harrison beat Quince on Judgment, correct?
No, I'm not aware of that, but I'm also not aware of him being top 5. I don't know who that person is.
Oh, Quince?
Name
Okay,
another competent
that's
person you
fine.
think is
So,
competent.
yeah, that's fine. Are you aware of who, like, Vibes is?
Nah, I just
Get
saw
my
him
name
this
out of
stage
your
a while
mouth. Get my
ago.
name out of your mouth. No, nigga.
Okay, well,
No,
listen,
nigga.
hear me out. I think
will
that
ban you.
I think that Quince is considerably better than Vibes, but Vibes, you are aware that he's beaten Six Paths, right?
Yup, I'm about to beat this.
Wait.
Nigga,
Pause right there, Archie.
what are you
Who's
talking
Six
about?
Paths? Who is Six Paths?
Oh, Six Paths? He's a guy. Well, maybe a guy. He's kind of large. I don't really know what he is, but
Oh, wait. You caught me
Something.
when he said large. I know he said he's fat, right? Like.
oh yes, extremely.
Yeah,
Like-
I think you should use someone else. Yeah, use someone else. Yeah.
Someone else. You don't. Do you think?
Yeah, I don't
being
really
fat is-
give fat people rights, to be honest. I'm fat phobic, so.
Oh, do you think being fat is like has anything to do with your intelligence quotients or
It
anything?
doesn't have to. I'm just fat phobic, so yeah.
Oh, okay, well then I don't think that's a valid reason.
Well, is there a valid reason for him being competent in the first place?
Yeah.
What's the
Oh,
valid
so
reason?
are you? Yeah, you do know who Aeroflame is, or
No, I have never. Who names their child Aeroflame? What the fuck is that?
oh, clearly autist. But I was gonna say, basically, Aeroflame. He's a 24-year-old guy. Has dreads, hasn't had a retwist in about 4 years. Yells at minors, children. Debates. What is that? What's that stuff called? Anime? I don't know, some kid stuff. He enjoys it, so it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see anything wrong with being a 24-year-old, man, just yelling at minors, children, threatening
I don't know,
to
man. That seems to be
and
hella
get
eccentric,
people
bro.
in jail because they lost the debate over a 2D character. That I think that's pretty acceptable. I think that's a level of competence right there. I think if you are able to out yell a 14-year-old, that means you're S2.
I don't know, man.
Aeroflame
That doesn't
is
seem
pretty
to me.
competent.
That doesn't seem to be a level of competence to me. But I mean, we can have our disagreements.
And what would be competent to you?
I don't know. You tell me.
So you don't have a already preset, idea?
No, I have a preset base of competency.
Because
my
your
basis
idea
my
of
bar for
competence,
competency.
your idea of competence can just be my idea of mundane. You know what I mean? Like we don't
Ordinary.
know. Yeah, mediocre.
Oh well, I would just basically say that would just mean that we just have different conceptual